In this video, I'm going to show you how to scaffold your models from an existing database. So, how to create models from the tables in our Northwind database. Now, this video is just an instructional video. You don't have to even follow this because we are not going to be using this way in our projects. And that's because creating it this way creates a lot of code that needs to be modified. And it's just easier for me to type it from scratch because it's easier for you to follow along on the video. If I have a lot of code generated for me and then I have to modify it, it's kind of a mess for you to follow along. And also, we are only going to be using one table, so it really is easier for me to just type it. However, I wanted to show you how to extract the data or the models from existing database in case you ever need it. So let's just create a project, and this is gonna be ASP.NET Core Web Application. And I'll just call this one Test Scaffold. And I just want an empty project, ASP.NET Core 3.1, and I want to disable HTTPS. And click Create. So here is our empty project. You can see we don't really have anything in our solution. What we have though is in our SQL server, we have the local DB with the databases and our Northwind database is there. So let's create models from this Northwind database and add them to our project. So we need few things here. First of all, we will need to install few packages. Now I'm not going to install them just yet. I'm going to run the commands and generate the error messages just so you see how to deal with them when you see them. So first thing we need is to install the tools. So you go to Package Manager Console, which is in Tools, NuGet Package Manager and Package Manager Console, and then you type your commands. So this one is .NET space tool install -- and global. So this is gonna install it globally. And then after global, you'll specify that this is for .NET Entity Framework. So .NET-EF. And press enter. Now, in my case, it says the tool is already installed. So what I'm going to do, just to show you, is to actually uninstall it. So I'm gonna run the same command, and you loop through the commands using the arrow keys on your keyboard. The up and down key will cycle through any commands that you already used. So I only have one, but I don't have to type it again. I'll just press the arrow key and the command comes up. So I'm going to use the uninstall. So this is gonna uninstall my tool. And you can see it was successfully uninstalled. So if you already have it installed, that's okay. However, when we install other packages, we have to make sure that the packages versions match the version of the .NET tool that is installed globally. So in my case, you can see I had the version 3.1.8. So if I try to then install packages that are higher number, it would give me a warning or an error that the package versions do not match. If that happens, simply use the uninstall command that will uninstall your tools, and then you will install it back on. And when you install it back on, by default it will install the latest version, so then you can install the latest versions of all the packages as well. So I'm going to cycle through my commands and use the .NET tool install. And you can see that it installed it successfully, and it installed 3.1.8 version, which is currently the latest version. Alright, so now let's try to run the command to scaffold the models. And the command is .NET-EF for Entity Framework, and we want to get the DB context scaffolded. So we'll type DB context and scaffold. And then we'll specify the connection string. Now the connection string to our database is something that we would have in our app settings.json when we connect to the database. but currently we don't have that yet. So you want to connect to our database for the Northwind in our local DB MS SQL DB server. So to get the connection string to this, it's very simple. In your SQL Server Object Explorer, go to your instance of local DB MS SQL Server, right-click it, and click Properties. And here's the properties, and the first one is connection string. And you can see it's the data source local DB MS SQL DB. So I'm going to copy that. Or you could just type it yourself. It doesn't really matter. It's a short command, but I wanted to show you how to find the connection string. Now we could get the whole connection string. I could go to properties again and just copy the whole thing, but there's properties from it that we don't actually need. So I just wanted to show you where you can find it. So after the scaffold, I will use quotes and specify a connection string. I'll paste it in there, and it's the data source local DB / MS SQL local DB. And it's a single slash. It doesn't have to have the escape slash like you need to have it in the app settings.json when you use the connection string there. Next, you need to specify the database you want to connect to. So this is going to be database equals, and it's our Northwind database. After that, I'm going to specify that this is a trusted connection. So this way, it will go through any firewall or any security settings you may have for connecting remotely. So this is going to be trusted _ connection equals true. And that is our connection string. So we'll close the quotes. And after that, we need to specify the server that we want to connect to. And we want to connect to the SQL server. So we'll specify Microsoft dot and then entity framework core dot SQL server. And then I specify what is the folder name where I want all the models to be created. So it's simply -o, so that's the output, and I want to call this folder models. So this would be the scaffolding, but when I press enter now, it says project not found. It says change the current working directory or use the -- project option, and that's what we are going to use. To get the project path, go to your Solution Explorer in your project, right-click it, and down here you can see there's a copy full path. So just click it, and it copies it into a clipboard. So now we can run the same command. So again, I'll use the up arrow and then specify the project. So it's the -- project space, and I will Control V, so I will paste the path to my project and press enter. Now you can see that it built it, but it does not have a reference to Microsoft Entity Framework Core design, and this package is required for the tools to work. So we need to install that. So let's just do it the old-fashioned way. Let's go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager for Solution, and let's browse for it. So this is for design, and I want to install the Microsoft Entity Framework Core .design. And what I want to do is to install the latest version 3.1.8. So remember, this is the same version that matches your tools version. So I'm just gonna install it. And I got no errors, so the design for the Entity Framework Core was installed. When I go to installed, you can see it's there. So let's go back to Package Manager console, and I'm going to run the command again. So I'll use the arrow key and I'll run it again. But it says it still cannot find it. And why is that? Well, it's because even though the Package Manager console built the project, it still did not find the Microsoft Entity Framework Core design package. So what I'm going to do is go to build and actually build the solution. and you can see everything succeeded. So now when I go to Package Manager console, it should find it. So let's run the command once more time. But now it says it was unable to find the provider assembly with the Microsoft Entity Framework Core SQL Server. We are using it in our connection string, but we don't have it actually installed. So let's install it. So again, let's go to NuGet Package Manager, and I'm going to browse for SQL Server. And I'm going to install the Microsoft.Entity Framework Core.SQL Server 3.1.8 version, so they match. And it was installed. And I'm going to build the project again. So it was built. Let's go back to the Package Manager console. And let's see if this time it works. And this time it actually worked. We have all the packages that it needed. And over here, you can now see it created the folder models. And in it, we have models for all the tables from the Northwind database. We have the employees, customers, orders, other subtotals, products, and all of them. So let's open the employees. And you can see it created the class for employees. And here are all the employees properties from the table. So it's the ID, last name, country, and all of them, as you can see. Now in our project we won't be using all of these, and we are going to be using a lot of attributes to make the properties, for example, required, or to specify a string length, and so forth. Alright, so this way we created models for each table inside the Northwind database. But you may not want to do that. You may just want to perhaps do one or two tables. So let me just show you how to do that. I'm going to delete the models. I'm going to close the NuGet solutions because everything's already installed. And we're going to modify our command for the scaffolding. So I'm going to press the arrow key again. So here is my command. And here, where I specify the models as the name of the folder where I want all the models to be, I'm going to also specify what tables I want to copy. And that's fairly simple. So after the O models, I'm gonna do space, then dash T, and that specifies the tables I want to copy. And let's say I just want to copy the employees table. So this will only copy the employees table. And I can also specify that I want to copy, so it's dash C, the DB context. And I want to name the DB context app DB context. So this will get the DB context and create all the DB sets that I need for the database to be connected to. And additionally, I may specify that I want this to be using data annotations. So I'll use dash dash and specify data dash annotation. So it will create a model and apply data annotations to the properties. So this is my updated command. Let's run this. And it says that the data annotation is unrecognized command, and that's because I forgot S. It's supposed to be annotations. So let me run the command again, but I'm gonna add S at the end of annotation to make it data annotations. Let's run this, and we have our models folder created again. So let's open that, and you can see we have the app DB context in it as well as the employees. So app DB context, as you can see, has the DB set for employees, and if you did not specify the tables, it would do all the tables and you would have DB sets for each of those models. Additionally, over here it's specified that we are using the SQL server, and it adds the connection string to it. And it also creates the onModel creating method that specifies the relationship between each of those properties. If you had multiple tables, it would be really long because obviously it would specify the relationships between each of those tables. Now let's have a look at the employees. And here is the employees properties. Again, it takes all the properties from the table for employees, but you can see it applied some data annotations. And these are all taken from whatever the database is set to. However, in our case, we may modify it. For example, we may make some of these fields required during registration, even if they are not required to be entered into the database. We may want to make them required anyway. And like I said, you can see it's a lot of stuff that I would need to modify here, and it would be difficult for you to follow. So I'm going to type it in my projects manually because, like I said, it's just one table, so it's easier to just type in. But this way, now you know how to actually scaffold your models from current and existing database. And that's exactly what I wanted to show you, so you can use it yourself and then modify it, or you can follow along and just type it with me, because it might be actually easier for you as well. But if you wanted models from all the tables inside the database for the Northwind, then you definitely want to use the scaffolding, because that would be a lot of typing. Now there's one more thing I want to show you here, and that is what happens when you already have created some of the models and you want to add some more. So I'm going to run the same command, but I'm going to remove this -t for the employees. Let's say I want to add all the tables. So I'm going to run it, and it's gonna give me an error. And that's because this already exists, so it doesn't know what to do with it. So what you can do is to force override. So I'm going to run the whole command again for all the tables from the database, and after the project I'm going to use -- and force. So this will force an override. Let's run this, and it was created. Let me just show you what we have here now. You can see we have all the tables again, and each of them has data annotations. When I open any of them, you can see they have data annotations on them, and you can see that's a lot of properties to type. So again, if you wanted to use all of these tables from the database, you want to use this way to scaffold your properties and your models. And let me just show you also app.db context for all the tables. And you can see here's the DB sets for each of those tables. And here is the model builder for a method for on model creating. And you can see again it has all the tables and all the relationship between each of those tables. Alright, so this was just an informational video just to show you how to scaffold from an existing database, and I explained why I'm not gonna do it for this project. But this is something that you will probably use sooner or later in your own projects, because not every time you will be creating a database, many times you will be working with already existing database. So I hope you found this useful and that you will find it useful in the future when you work with existing databases. But this is enough for this. Next, let's start working on our actual project.